Is your email safe? Maybe your answer is, I don't know. So maybe that is the wrong question. How about, can people snoop into your email? The answer is yes, and someone is probably doing so right now. We'll talk about that in this program. Also in this Brooklyn 45, Christmas. Is it losing its significance? What should we be celebrating at Christmas? Joining me later to discuss this is Reverend James Thornton, Senior Pastor at Salem Baptist Church in Brooklyn. But let's begin with the question, are people snooping into your email? Do they have a right to? Is what you believe to be personal email conversation with someone really just between you and them? Have you thought about it? Well, if you haven't, make sure. Joining me to talk about this snooping into your privacy is David Springer, who is the CEO of Connexion. Connexion is an information technology services company. I know you don't like the word snooping, or you would prefer that I don't use the word snooping, but I'm going to throw snooping at you anyhow. So let's begin there.
Okay, well, snooping implies there's a continuous action. Generally, you know, as far as email is concerned, most operations have email systems that back up their email, and the large email places like Google, Hotmail, that kind of stuff, they store all of their email, and I mean they store all of your email. So to say snooping would be that they're continuously check your email. Yes, there is some continuous checking of email for the free providers, but generally for corporations, they tend not to do that.
What do corporations do? When I work at a company, I'm not going to say what company that is. There are other. We all work. Most of us work at companies, and we send email out every day. Do they get the opportunity to, or do they find a reason to check your email?
Well, corporations, it depends on how corporations see your email. Most corporations will see your email as simply a product of your work, and they have rights to review your work, look at your communications, and you know, if they have to, you know, look at it in a way that's that they can make decisions based upon that. Most corporations don't do that, but corporations are now more than ever trying to do that. And the reason they're doing that is simply to protect themselves. And
against what?
Against litigation, against noncompliance. Those are the two primary aspects of email storage that corporations try to protect themselves against. And litigation refers to, you know, if you have a lawsuit and, you know, and the lawyers are asking for information, not having email or not having communications, you know, could be deemed, you know, an act of aggression. So they try to protect themselves against that.
I've heard that there are often clauses in an employment contract that gives the employer the right to check your email. That's not in my contract, as far as I'm aware. But is that so?
Generally, the answer to that is yes. The new contracts that large corporations do, they do have a clause that say that they can check whatever you produce, including email. You know, these clauses are usually general and overreaching, you know, to match simply how your management can tell you that you can perform any task that they deem fit. So likewise, they can look at anything that you produce as they deem fit.
Let's move over to the corporation. Let's move outside of the corporation.
Okay.
Can your neighbor check your email?
Well, your neighbor shouldn't be checking your email.
But can they?
But they can if they understand some of the tools that exist for, you know, hacking into your system. Obviously, it's against the law, but you know, they can if they had to. You know, that means one of the things that we should all do is actually have a protected network. You know, make sure you don't have an open network. for your wireless, and it will make life a little harder for people.
But people don't usually have networks in their homes.
Well, I mean, most people have internet access, and most people have that wireless device that they connect to wirelessly, and if it's open, I can actually generally get into your network sitting outside of my car.
It can be done.
Yes.
If you delete your email, you delete it, it's gone. Is it really gone?
The answer to that is no. It's not really gone. You know, there are federal agencies that can retrieve information off your hard drive. They've done it before, and so the answer is no, it's generally not gone. But most people don't have emails on their computer. Their emails are stored in some provider like Google, Hotmail, Yahoo, and those emails are most likely still stored.
You know, there's this very interesting story that we all heard of a couple of weeks ago about General Petraeus and his mistress, who, because she was jealous for some reason or other, complained to the police, and the police went into the general's email.
Well, my understanding is that the general was not even part of the investigation.
Exactly.
That they were looking at, and he was actually on the fringe of this investigation, and they happened, per happenstance, to get in and saw that there was some communication. But it's interesting because the general, from my understanding, used one of those techniques that is usually resort to terrorists. Terrorists utilize this technique for not having to track your email across the internet. So that's a very interesting story in itself. What they were doing is they were writing emails, but they weren't sending them. They would leave them in the draft, and then they would go read each other's draft email. So, you know, there are ways that people try to get around it, but, you know, the federal agencies are, you know, they are very smart about this. And
so even though it's in the draft, and you
Yes.
think you've deleted it, it's still there?
It's still there.
Tell me about the Patriot Act.
Well, I'm no lawyer, but the Patriot Act,
As it relates to...
as it relates to access, you know, their process is that they can access anything under this act to, you know, as under the guise of, you know, terrorism, to, you know, get into your privacy. But prior to the Patriot Act, there's actually an act, I believe it's called the SCA, which is the Storage and Electronic Communications Act of 1986, which allows the government to get into your email system and take your emails without a warrant. So if you think that as an individual, you know, that you're free to, you know, that you have rights, there is legislation out there that you know, will stop you with that, prohibits you from doing certain things.
Is there software that people can purchase to protect their privacy?
Yes, there's a number of things you can use to protect your privacy. You know, there's encryption software. There's proxy software. Encryption software means that, you know, you'll communicate in an encrypted format, and it's harder to crack. Generally, email goes in clear text. So, you know, if you're snooping someone's network, you can actually just read their email. But if it's encrypted, then it'll take some time for you to figure out how to get into that. And, you know, most people, if there's encryption, then they'll rather leave your stuff alone and try somebody else's that's not encrypted.
One last question. Talk a bit about Facebook and privacy. We just heard that Facebook wanted to own everyone's photos. And I understand they've backed off that a bit, so is Instagram. But what is your warning for people who post all sorts of information on Facebook?
It's public. Most people don't look at their privacy settings on Facebook, and they should. Facebook is open to the general public, so you really shouldn't post stuff on Facebook that you wouldn't like your boss to see, your spouse to see if it's an issue, your friends to see. So, you should consider it, you're standing talking to the President of the United States, because it will be public.
Should be frightening, right?
It is frightening, and that goes the same for email. When you send an email, you should consider that the executive of your company will see this email. So you should generally write your emails in a format that's respectful and without profanities, and generally that someone that has access to your life or a decision-making process.
And governments and large companies have their huge IT companies, and those other corporations who don't have their in-house IT personnel, they seek companies like you.
Yes, they do. They seek us out to help them, navigate some of these issues, and to be compliant with the law, which is to store their emails in a format in a central location, and to back stuff up when required.
And your company again is?
Connexion Inc. We're an IT company, outsourced IT department.